You know what? Now that you mention it, I do actually remember that one time.
It was so memorable.
I do actually remember that one time when he beat Reynad. Okay, I've also seen Catdestroyer on ladder a little bit. Believe the Druid and Amnesiac on the Rogue, if the Golden Celebration card back
absolutely.
is any indication.
That is a good giveaway that maybe the cams have been swapped, and we're actually seeing Amnesiac on the Rogue to begin with.
Yeah, so we'll try and get that straightened out for you guys right away, but I don't recall Catdestroyer having topped in any HCT tournaments. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of a good heads-up call by Catdestroyer, understanding that a lot of people, when they bring Rogue, do like to lead it first, so queuing up the aggro Druid is a good way to kind of catch them off guard as well.
The aggro Druid up against the Tempo Rogue. We saw a lot of aggro Druid yesterday. We saw it kind of falter a little bit here and there, but up against Tempo Rogue in general, it should be a fairly good matchup. The aggro Druid can go wide very quickly, can use those buff spells like Power of the Wild and Mark of the Lotus to build up a big board of relatively threatening creatures. And then, of course, Galaka Crawler onto the Rogue's Pirates early on is just a tempo swing that usually the Rogue can't come back from.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Catdestroyer, Edwin Van Cleef is not a pirate, and boy does Amnesiac have the Edwin hand.
This is a bit gross, if we're being perfectly honest. It's a lot to commit onto the Edwin very early on for Amnesiac, but fortunately for him, Catdestroyer has no resources in the deck that can actually counter just an early 8-8 or 10-10 Van Cleef.
Yeah, I think Amnesiac here is kind of weighing the risk of playing the Firefly this turn. Perhaps he might be thinking Firefly Shadow Step, and then he can go coin Firefly Shadow Step it again, play it again, and play the Edwin. Edwin's still a very reasonable size given the first Shadow Step. At this point, you're not losing to any possibilities of Catdestroyer just bumping and trading into it the following turn.
He's going to go ahead and expend that first Shadow Step just to set up the Firefly, Shadow Step, Firefly, coin Edwin for next turn.
Yeah, I definitely like this play from Amnesiac, just being a little more risk adverse here. Because what if Catdestroyer does have a bad hand and ends up hero powering, killing the Firefly? Then you're kind of stuck with the dead turn the following turn. You don't want to give up those resources when you have this potential Edwin the following turn.
Yeah, exactly. And as much as you want this Edwin to be as big as possible, you'd also rather have it on the board a turn or two earlier and have it be, you know, +2, +2, or +4 smaller, because then you get that much more damage on the time.
Absolutely. I think in this case, a 10-10 Edwin will still serve the purpose quite well.
Amnesiac taking some careful notes. This is one of the few tournaments in which the players actually can keep track of their opponent's cards just with some pen and paper. Of course, it needs to be a new piece of paper for every match, but note-taking is allowed, and for a lot of players is a very valuable tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a strategy that definitely kind of favors the pros. Have been, taking so many notes about dream hacks and such. And Catdestroyer is no stranger to that, kind of taking some notes on his own. Definitely had some experience about dream hacks as well.
But this early Edwin is just going to be such a big hurdle for Catdestroyer to get over. He doesn't have any resources to kill it outright. He doesn't have great means to slow it down. The Druid of the Swarm, I suppose, as a 1/5 could soak up 10 damage potentially, but this just isn't a threat that is going to be dealt with anytime soon.
What happens if Catdestroyer goes for Poisonous here?
Well, there really are only a couple of counters, I suppose. It would be South Sea Captain pulling patches from the deck, if you have patches in hand plus the dagger, or some form of zero-cost card and SI7 agent, for instance, if Catdestroyer picks the Poisonous Spider and then clears off the Firefly.
I am a big fan of going for the Druid of the Swarm as poisons and putting on the Mark of the Lotus. And it creates a very awkward turn for Amnesiac, because even though he does have outs such as Captain and Backstab, but if he doesn't have that combination of cards, he needs to play Backstab and spend his turn 3 daggering up. So that's a lot of tempo that Amnesiac loses in order to deal with this 2/3 Poisonous.
That's a great point, and Catdestroyer knows what 3 of the cards in Amnesiac's hand are. It looks like Amnesiac has an abundance of resources. He's actually just played Firefly 3 times.
That's a lot of flame elementals. And yeah, Catdestroyer is definitely keeping track of that, understanding that Amnesiac's hand size is a lot smaller than it appears to be at this point.
Amnesiac just doesn't have any way to clear up this Poisonous Spider.
Yeah, this is kind of a turning point for Amnesiac, where he decides whether it's time to abandon ship with the Edwin. 10 damage doesn't matter a whole lot when you don't have the follow-up, so Here, what are you supposed to do with the 10-10? And Amnesiac actually goes and takes the trade with the Dire Maul. Yeah, the 10 damage is appealing, but when you don't have the remainder of that 20, you got to kind of still have to play for board here.
This is going to be a big swing back for Catdestroyer. He picks up the Enchanted Raven to fill out the curve this turn. Patches shooting out of his cannon will make a nice clean trade into one of these Flame Elementals. And this is Aggro Druid at its finest. Definitely seeing why this deck is so effective against Tempo Rogue.
Yeah, it's making up for some of the losses that it kind of took the previous day, but Aggro Druid shining strong in this matchup once again. Amnesiac with kind of an awkward hand here as well. The Elven Minstrels, very hard to combo in the aggressive decks because in the matchups where they're pressuring your face, you don't really have a lot of time to draw cards. And obviously the Patches draw, not a very welcome one at this point either.
And that's sort of what you run the risk of when you go all in on an Edwin very early. Utilize that coin very quickly, used both Shadow Steps. So 3 cards that could have potentially been combo pieces now are already gone. And granted, it is probably the safest Edwin you're ever going to play. The only thing that could have killed it, unfortunately, was available for Catdestroyer.
Catdestroyer, Druid of the Storm. I mean, it is a very risky play, but it's one that I think was very heads up on Catdestroyer's side. Buffing it outside of backstab range. If Amnesiac had the backstab, yes, he would have been in a better position, but again, he would have taken a huge tempo loss, having to dagger up on his turn 3 as well. It looks like Catdestroyer has 2-turn lethal online here. Amnesiac, seemingly no outs at this point. Maybe just something to stall like a Tar Creeper or a Serenite Chain Gang, but overall, just no way to deal with the wide board state that Catdestroyer has assembled here. Amnesiac probably looking for backstab on the Captain, Elven Minstrel into something like Southsea Deckhand here.
Okay, that would allow him to live for at least the time being.
Swashbuckler, kind of the wrong pirate in this situation.
Well, nothing that Amnesiac can do. Catdestroyer is going to take game number 1 on the back of that Poisonous Spider, able to take down a 10-10 Edwin Van Cleef from Amnesiac on turn 3. Very head decks in the format. I would expect Amnesiac to be just fine with this list, and it is going to be a mirror, actually, for game number 2.
Yeah, and this time around, Catdestroyer with the coin and the Edwin, definitely 2 very strong keeps on his side. And generally, the Rogue Mirror does favor the player with the coin because a lot of the deck revolves around comboing your cards out, and the coin is such a useful tool to both pick up tempo and to just become an activator for some of your harder to cast minions.
Yeah, even though we're not playing in the days of Miracle Rogue anymore, where the coin, you literally live and die by the coin as Rogue in that time period. The coin is still, very effective of the win rate in Rogue decks overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've seen like variants of the Tempo Rogue actually include 1 copy, maybe even 2 copies of Counterfeit Coin. Just kind of shows how powerful having that extra mana be in a Rogue deck list.
Yeah, talking to a couple of the pro players, they've even taken to cutting a copy of Firefly or a copy of Tar Creeper just to have 1 copy of Counterfeit Coin, have that extra combo activation, maybe cheat the mana curve a little bit. Yeah,
and here Catdestroyer also picks up a Shadow Step, so kind of akin to the way Amnesiac's game plan went game 1, we might see that kind of mirrored in Catdestroyer's game plan here in game 2. Yeah, Catdestroyer thinking how best to navigate, how best to create a safe but still very healthy Edwin Van Cleef.
This matchup going to rely a lot on who can build up the first really substantial board state and then get to spiral the tempo in their own favor from there. It's going to be a lot of back and forth on board.
Catdestroyer kind of taking one from Amnesiac's book, picking up the Swashbuckler again with the Shadow Step, just setting up the Edwin the next turn.
And this Edwin going unchallenged by Amnesiac right now. Too early for Spellbreaker, no Vile Spines available, so Amnesiac could be eating quite a bit of damage off of this Edwin Van Cleef early on.
Yeah,
but
I think Amnesiac is definitely very privy to this game plan. I mean, he just pulled it off the previous turn. On his side, he probably wants to go as wide as possible this turn. Traditionally, Dagger Up is perfectly fine on turn 2, but knowing that the Edwin is coming out next turn, you're going to want to push some extra damage. So maybe it's even something like Firefly, Swashbuckler coming out early, giving up the dagger, decidedly because he does have Captain as a follow-up the next turn as well.
Picks up the Shaku as well. If Amnesiac does manage to get over that Edwin Van Cleef, he'll have access to additional really valuable resources off of that Shaku, so that's a pretty nice pickup.
Job done.
Yeah, and Amnesiac taking his time here, probably just jotting down the details on Edwin Van Cleef. How big will it be this turn? Probably a 6/6 for Catdestroyer. But again, that does mean that the coin will be used early in this matchup, which is always good. It means that Amnesiac doesn't have to play around coin Valspine Slayer later on in the game when he has his quarter creeper turn. It's a little bit harder for Catdestroyer to pull off things like Elven Minstrel and stuff like that down the line as well. And this will be a very decided turn for Catdestroyer as well, because Amnesiac will get a read on whether or not Catdestroyer has backstab in the hand. This is definitely a turn where he's going to go all in on Edwin, which means if there is a backstab, he's willing to throw it out here. Overall, Amnesiac gets a great read on what Catdestroyer has left in the hand.
Sudden Betrayal pickup off of the Swashbuckler, one of the new rogue secrets. Not very useful right now, but like you said, Catdestroyer just going for the Edwin that he set in motion last turn with the Shadow Step onto the Swashbuckler. It is imposing, but not quite as threatening as the one that Amnesiac had set up in the previous game. So, while it is a big threat, Amnesiac is going to have a little bit of time here. He can't even just clear it this turn with South Sea Captain coming down, getting the buffs on the Swashbuckler and the patches if he wants.
Yeah, and this is something that maybe Amnesiac is a little mindful of as well, is that if he does trade into the Edwin, his quarter creeper will be still 1 mana, and it gives Catdestroyer the opportunity to put out his quarter creeper first. Because in the aggressive mirrors, it's actually to Amnesiac's advantage here. He gets to decide when the quarter creepers come online because he's the one with the wider board state. Catdestroyer is able to kind of clear off 1 minion at a time, but that doesn't allow him to dictate when quarter creeper comes out. So Amnesiac definitely very mindful of that. Will decide basically how he wants to play out the next few turns. Make it so he gets the first quarter creeper online, taking up the tempo again in the mirror.
Yeah, and importantly, because he picked up the Shaku off of the Swashbuckler, at least he has options this turn. He doesn't just have to dagger and not develop anything. If he wants to try and dictate the pace of the game by getting that first creeper down, he can just Shaku this turn, trade over the Swashbuckler, and maybe eat 6 points of damage. But he is going to instead make those full trades, try to get that board presence back, and just hope the Catdestroyer doesn't have multiple corridor creepers in hand right now. Fortunately, he only has the one.
Yeah, I actually don't like this play as much.
Really?
Because of the board state and the way it pans out for you, you just have the ability to dictate when they have quarter creeper or not.
Okay.
And Amnesiac does have it. He could have used that to his advantage. Getting the first one online is very important. But now Catdestroyer instead will get his out first, making it so that Amnesiac has less of an impact.
Well, Amnesiac is going to be able to counter with his own corridor creeper alongside Shaku and the Firefly if he wants. And now looking at Catdestroyer's hand, he's working with that Star Knight Chain Gang, which is pretty nice, a Vile Spine, which he can't activate yet, and then those 2 Swashbuckler cards, which are really awkward and incredibly situational.
Yeah, what does he have? Valyra for the late game? Doesn't really go that far.
Yeah.
Sudden Betrayal hasn't really been played in competitive play yet. This will be an interesting test to see where that card kind of lands.
It's definitely possible the Catdestroyer could have 2 extra mana some turn, drop that Sudden Betrayal down, and maybe Amnesiac won't play around it correctly just because he's never seen it in competitive play before.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's possible.
It's probably the secret that comes least to mind, kind of like Eye for an Eye or something like that.
It's a weird one. I mean, maybe Amnesiac's been dusting off his arena gameplay recently, but yeah, it's a weird card.
Yeah, Catdestroyer's curve is kind of panning out a little bit better now, having the Chain Gang in hand. Could even fit in the secret next turn just to proc the SI7 agent if he needs to.
That's a good point. And then from there, he's going to be looking for any combo activators for that Vile Spine Slayer. But just looking forward, Amnesiac, solely on the fact that he has that Bone Mare in hand, it likely is just going to have that stronger late game push.
Yeah, that's something that Shaku actually did very well in previous rogue builds before this expansion, was that it allowed you to play something on turn 6 that just was hard for the opponent to deal with, set up that Bone Mirror turn if you happen to be behind.
Catdestroyer already getting impatient, asking how long can this go on? A couple more turns at least. It's only turn 4.
Just kind of deciding whether or not trading out the Quarter Creeper is worth it here for him. But because he was the first one to get it online, he is able to be the aggressor in the situation as well.
Force Amnesiac to make the trades. Generally, if you're playing a tempo mirror, the player that is forced to make those trades is behind.
Yeah, Amnesiac here needs something good off of this Swashbuckler just to kind of fill out this turn 5. I imagine
Blow's not a bad pickup.
Coming out, yeah. Just to get something like a 4-drop, because he does happen to have Flame Elemental and Valspine Slayer for the following turn. These are some pretty bad options.
The Deadly Fork. There were some decent 4-drops you could have picked up. Satsi Squidface comes to mind. Zeril, Poisoned Mind. But unfortunately, the Bone Baron and the Deadly Fork are just a little bit too clunky.
And I like Amnesiac's pickup overall. You could either decide between the fork or the 1-drop, and the fork just isn't even. And the fork just isn't even as good as just setting up a dagger this turn. So I like the fact that Amnesiac kind of recognizes that dagger is actually more important than getting out the 3-2. You just never have time to play that card, basically. Here, Catdestroyer again, maybe a little punished for not making trade with Quarter Creepers. Now the 5-3 is kind of hard for him to deal with, but he does have something like the Sudden Betrayal to set up the SI7 agent and Dagger Poke.
That's true. Then your Corridor Creeper is technically dead on board with the Dagger Swing, but at least Amnesiac is forced to trade over. Maybe take a little bit additional damage.
Ha, this guy's toast.
Backstab a very welcome pickup on Amnesiac's side. He'll be able to clear up the board and go into a turn 7 with a board of his own and a Bone Mirror to threaten it as well. And here comes the Rogue Secrets, right? Amnesiac's thinking, oh God, what was that third or second Rogue Secret in there?
Is it Cheat Death? Is Amnesiac going to give Catdestroyer an additional copy of Corridor Creeper SI7 agent here? Is it the other one that gives your opponent immune after you attack? Its name escapes me at the moment.
So it's not immune, it is not the Cheat Death, so Amnesiac has already zoned in on this being the third and final secret, Sudden Betrayal. Played around it very well, and here he's going to put the biggest minion in the middle, so that way the smaller minions don't die in the Sudden Betrayal if he happens to have to deal with that the following turn.
Sudden Betrayal, Cheat Death. What is the third one?
And Backstab actually probably the best pickup for Catdestroyer here. Manages to fill out the curve, get the Valspine down, and pull out his Quarter Creeper. Yeah, the random card Valera isn't great, but perhaps this is one of those games that actually goes the distance here.
It's possible. And then any additional resources are very welcome. Valera just giving you an extra copy of your draw every turn. It's pretty nice. Catdestroyer can't full clear the board this turn, meaning that Bone Mare will come down onto a target.
Catdestroyer
Evasion.
deciding to maybe take a few notes here.
The third one is Evasion.
It seems like at this point you're pretty all in. Catdestroyer
Really?
decided to play around Bone Mare here.
Okay, he's saving that Valspine Slayer. It's a very patient play. He's going to go down to a pretty low life total, but he might get rewarded for it.
Yeah, this is very interesting. So you had the option, of course, to kind of go all in and get the Creeper out, get the Valspine, but recognizing that Amnesiac will still have a minion on the board, decides instead, maybe we can wait. maybe we can play around this Bone Mare instead and maybe pick some additional value here in this game.
And he can now clear off the buff Firefly, but you still have to deal with the Bone Mare. And he has no way of doing that. So, still just lethal represented on board.
Unfortunately, in the Rogue Mirror, when, you know, Leroy, Shadow Step, and so much burn damage, as well as Bone Mare being such a damage push as well, you want to play patient as much as you can, but sometimes you do just fall too far behind. In this case, we see that, you know, even without the Leroy, Amnesiac had set up lethal, despite something like Valspine Slayer coming down on the 6/6 here. And Catdestroyer kind of giving it a nod here.
Seeing there's unfortunately just no way out of this one for him. Maybe if he'd had 4 mana, another Sarnite Chain Gang off the top could have stalled out a little bit, but not the mana available, not the cards available to him, and Amnesia to win him that mirror. And now we're going to be seeing the reverse of things, actually. Amnesiac bringing out his Aggro Druid and Catdestroyer queuing back up that Tempo Rogue. So now another favorable matchup for Amnesiac.
Yeah, a lot of back and forth between these two players. Getting the aggro decks out of the way. Maybe Amnesiac thinking, you know, Catdestroyer just lost on Rogue. There's a good chance he'll queue it again. Good time for me to play my aggro druid. This is a lot of, and people say like Conquest pick order and stuff like that don't matter too much, but when you get that read on the opponent, a lot of the times it can pan out to be pretty rewarding if you get the favorable queue.
And just looking at the quality of both of these early starts here, Amnesiac is going to have double ones into Druid of the Swarm, Dire Mole Power of the Wild now for buffs if he wants it, and Catdestroyer doesn't have a lot to work with, unfortunately. It's going to be an empty deckhand on 1 into a dagger on 2, likely.
Yeah, and Amnesiac with the aggressive Druid start that you kind of want to see in this matchup. Druid of the Swarm, already a very powerful minion, kind of sets up a giant wall so the rogue can't really deal with your other minions. A lot of the times this kind of strategy involves Druid of the Storm getting coined out first. You know, put up that wall first, and then you go with 2/1 drops again, leading up to like Bloodsteel Corsair and the buff on the 3rd turn. Very, very difficult for the rogue to deal with, especially with the 1/5 taunt in the way.
We'll have to see if Amnesiac's going to use the coin on turn 1 or if he's going to choose to hold it. All right, playing it a little bit slower.
And Catdestroyer, again, like turn 1, holding the South Sea deckhand, understands that a lot of his minions will be removed. And on top of that, he would rather use them for removal than to put them out there and be weaker to something like Galactic Crawler.
Good point. Don't want to have to play what you don't have to.
Amnesiac picking up the 2nd buff, just figuring out here how to set up the most safe board state.
There's so much power in this hand. He just needs to sequence it correctly.
Amnesiac maybe deciding to go wide here. Catdestroyer did use a dagger charge, so this is one of the key turns where something like Bloodsteel Corsair actually, you know, sets up some disruption from the rogue's game plan.
A little bit of an upside. You don't usually see it actually destroying any weapons, but if you can get it, you might as well.
So key turn from Amnesiac. Potentially going for like 1 coin 2 here makes a lot of sense. Just filling out your mana curve, so next turn you can go for 2 and 1 again.
So would you go Corsair, coin, Druid of the Swarm? Probably taunt up?
Yeah, I think Amnesiac might even go for the buff this turn.
Oh, all right. Get a little bit more damage immediately. Set up for that 2nd buff next turn. Does make the turn 3 a little bit inefficient potentially, but you're representing so much damage and so much board presence immediately that it's just going to be better in the long run.
Yeah, overall, this is just the kind of start that, you know, Aggro Druid, once they get so far ahead with the early buff, the 1 mana buff especially, it's so hard for Rogue to come back. Rogue without any board clears, the best you could really expect is something like Swashbuckler into a Starfall or a Swipe later on, maybe even a Spreading Plague.
That's a lot to ask.
Very rarely does the Druid give you that much time.
Trust the pirate's code. I'm in charge now.
So Catdestroyer just going to have to go put some pirates on the board. If there is a Galactic Crawler from Amnesiac, that's probably just going to be game over. But as we can see, there is not one in hand.
And Quarter Creeper, another very welcome draw in the matchup. Just when you think the Aggro Druid's run out of steam, pop down to 5/5, get a little more going there, really solidifies your win condition here.
Then they drop a Hydra, then they drop a Living Mana.
Yeah, I mean, overall the matchup just seems like Rogue feels so desperate at every turn of the corner. It's just you've got Living Mana later on in the game, like you said, Galactic Crawler once you try to develop that board state. Very, very tough matchup for Rogue to beat.
It's very difficult to be playing from ahead. You need to have that early backstab SI7 agent curve, and then even still, it's possible to get behind because the Aggro Druid just puts out so many cheap minions, and then suddenly, now you're looking at all of these buffed minions, which are that much more difficult to deal with. And nice trades over by Amnesiac, keeping that Dire Mole healthy because it is a beast on the board, and the beasts are more valuable than the pirates in the long run.
Yeah, I like Catdestroyer's play here. Understanding that playing on curve here just won't get much accomplished, decides to instead remove as much as he can, maybe making some way for the Chain Gang to do some work here in the following turns.
To at least be a big disruptor. Amnesiac finds the Galactic Crawler. If that second captain comes down for Catdestroyer, then Amnesiac will have a lot of game here. But even still, just Druid of the Swarm, 2-mana Creeper, put Catdestroyer down to 12. We're looking at a closed-up game in just a couple of turns for Amnesiac.
Yeah, I think Amnesiac understands that Catdestroyer is really only out here on turn 5 is maybe something like Backstab Valswine Slayer. So while Poisonous is good, it does kind of play into that one outer that Catdestroyer might have.
Yeah, it does a little bit. Backstab Vilespine to remove the Spider and the Creeper. The Vilespine plus the Dagger then challenges the Dire Mole on board. And if Amnesiac were left with a couple of inconsequential cards in hand, none of those impactful ones like we were mentioning, then maybe this could have been a stabilization point for Catdestroyer. But we do see the Vilespine. No activator, however.
Yeah, wrong 0-mana spell there. Shadow Step, not quite as useful here.
Let's see, 5, 8, 9, 10 damage for Amnesiac. Catdestroyer can play the Sarnite and just try to steer some of that damage away from face.
Yeah, I think perhaps Amnesiac with the Poisonous was thinking more or less along the lines of Targ Creeper being an issue, or like you're mentioning, the Sarnite Chain Gang may be able to stall out a little bit longer here. Oh, you've already seen a lot of pirates. Maybe it's time to just kind of let these Galactic Crawlers loose, use them to kind of set up lethal throughout the next few turns.
Just a couple of 2-mana 2/3s on the board. And Amnesiac can push 5 this turn as well. Put Catdestroyer right down to 7. This is more than enough damage on board to close up the game next turn. Can Catdestroyer find anything here to prevent that lethal push? No, he cannot.
Yeah, even the Valspine Slayer kind of useless now. It'd be nice to have it on the 5/5, but 7 damage remaining on the board makes it very tough for Catdestroyer to find him out there.
Well, Amnesiac going to take the 2-1 lead in this series. Go Priest. And Catdestroyer bringing out that Rogue now for the 3rd time.
Yeah, this is maybe one of the harder matchups for the Rogue, especially when Amnesiac looks to have brought a Raza Priest variant with dragons on top of it. So something like Dustbreaker, although it's a one-of, can have just such a huge impact on the game.
It is pretty much aggro breaker if you have it on turn 4, or with the coin in this case on turn 3 for Amnesiac. If Catdestroyer doesn't get Keleseth early on and then buff his minions out of range of the Duskbreaker, it's just such an enormous tempo swing in favor of the Priest that it's very difficult for the Rogue to come back from that.
Yeah, and Catdestroyer going for the full mulligan, tossing the Southsea Deckhand and the 4-drop. Instead, he's found kind of a dead hand, but at the same time, those Quarter Creepers will fill out the curve a little bit for Catdestroyer as he picks up more minions on curve throughout the next few turns.
That is not the hand that Catdestroyer wanted to see. But maybe Amnesiac's Duskbreaker won't get quite as much value on curve, at least, because Catdestroyer doesn't have anything to play.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, this is one of those hands that does have the potential to play around Duskbreaker, which is something that aggro decks definitely struggle against.
And Tempo Rogue, it doesn't go quite as late as it did pre-Kobolds and Catacombs when you were seeing Karen Bloodhoof and the Lich King in the builds, but it still does have the ability to win out in the late game with some bigger minions, with some bone-marred minions, so maybe Catdestroyer's just... he's going to have to forego the early game because he doesn't have it, but maybe he can put together that mid to late game plan and try to put on enough pressure that way.
Absolutely, and it's something that Catdestroyer has kind of signaled as well this game to Amnesiac. Swinging the dagger on turn 2 means that often you're going to be re-daggering up the following turn, meaning that you don't have that 3-drop. But here Catdestroyer picks up the one savior here. Prince Keleseth, always a very welcome draw, especially with the Shadow Step at hand. Maybe Catdestroyer is thinking how he can kind of combo this together with the Edwin, maybe going Prince Shadow Step this turn, and then hoping to make the Edwin play the following turn.
Yep, you could hold that Keleseth in hand if you're not super concerned with getting the additional +1/+1 on a minion that is immediately drawn, because it makes your Edwin that much better going forward. Choosing to hold the dagger swing could have killed off the Novice Engineer, would have discounted the corridor creepers, but holding it means maybe you have more options for the next turn.
Yeah, I mean, the 1 damage seems kind of irrelevant. You take an extra 1 here, it won't matter too much. Amnesiac, with kind of a soft punish. You got the powered shield on the Novice Engineer here.
Yeah. Not a big deal.
Not a big deal at all. And Amnesiac also with a Skulking Geist in his priest deck means that he might be giving a nod to something like Jade Druid being prevalent in the tournament as well.
Yeah, absolutely can be. Also, potentially traditional Raza Priests as well. And you want to just try and cut down on Velen combo pieces that they've got access to in the later game. Since Amnesiac's going to have a stronger mid-game option with all of his dragons, then maybe that can give him a bit of an edge in that matchup.
Yeah, and Catdestroyer picking up the South Sea deckhand.
That's perfect.
What a recovery.
Okay. That is a 3/2 deckhand, too.
Hand, yeah, coming out with Bone Mare, 2 Quarter Creepers. Didn't look very promising at all for Amnesiac, but now a way to combo the Edwin. The Prince, of course, putting in a lot of work as well.
That was an incredible series of draws for Catdestroyer. And with all of these minions trading off, the corridor creepers are going to be that much cheaper. Catdestroyer can have a really strong turn 5 maybe, or he can wait until there's a big board clear and then use that as reload.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to see Catdestroyer, of course, respect the Acolyte of Pain, but then just kind of ignore the Novice Engineer here. Not a whole lot of reason to trade into the 1/3. The chip damage does matter a lot in this matchup, and missing 3 here is a little disappointing.
Maybe a little bit too defensive.
Yeah, Amnesiac finding still a pretty solid clear for Dustbreaker here. Dustbreaker, again, contesting the Edwin.
Both of these corridor creepers now sitting at 2 mana apiece. Amnesiac's going to have a pretty strong sequence of turns going forward because of this Twilight Drake. Can be very effective on board, just used to clear up a lot of the minions that Catdestroyer could seemingly put down in the next couple of turns.
Yeah, Amnesiac not very happy seeing both creepers come out here.
Yeah. He does have Anduin in hand. We're still a couple of turns away from that. He's got Psychic Scream. Still a couple turns away from that. So does Amnesiac want to take maybe a turn to deviate? Go for a Shadow Visions and try to find Dragonfire Potion, because the Twilight Drake, well, usually it's quite good on board against Tempo Rogue. Not too effective here.
Yeah, and I think Amnesiac, one of the benefits of running this dragon list, that you're replacing a lot of the spells, because you have Geist as well, you're replacing a lot of the 1-mana spells with minions, like the Dragon Package. So Shadow Visions actually becomes a little more reliable in this deck as well. A higher chance to hit something like Dragonfire Potion definitely would make Amnesiac a little more inclined to go for that line of play.
On the flip side, he could put that Drake out this turn and try to go for a Wild Pyro clear on the next turn, maybe with that Shadow Visions as well.
Yeah, the Pyro is actually looking not too bad here either. You can go like Pyro, Visions, Holy Smite. That'll clear up the 6/3 and take care of a 5/5 for you as well.
All right, so Amnesiac making the best out of a bad situation, able to clear up most of the pressure on the board and pick up a Shadow or Death to kill off that corridor creeper next turn. And very importantly for him, Catdestroyer is only going into turn 6, so we're still 1 turn off of Bone Mare.
Yeah, I like that Catdestroyer is... it seems like he wants to play the captain. I mean, there is a possibility to play captain here just to pressure a little bit. You did see the Shadow Vision, so you're maybe expecting something like Dragonfire Potion to come out soon. He has a full turn next turn with Southsea Captain and Elven Minstrel, which would be great to pressure with the board and get a little additional reload going as well.
So you could go harder onto the board this turn to try and set up for a Bone Mare on 7, or you could play a little bit more safe and try to ensure that you do have the additional resources off of the Elven Minstrel. I like this play. I think it's a little bit unrealistic to expect that anything's going to stick around for Bone Mare since you just saw Shadow Visions.
Yeah, and Amnesiac here picking up Pint-Sized Potion maybe alludes to the fact that his deck has even more AoE in it. Pint-Sized Potion generally comes in a pair with Shadow Recorder as well.
Giving Amnesiac an additional full board clear in the deck if he can find those 2 combo pieces. But Catdestroyer is going to have a full turn of development here, and it's buffed development, importantly. Both of these minions, +2/+2 off of that Keleseth, Shadow Step Keleseth early on. So this is a threatening board. Still 1 turn away from Shadow Reaper Anduin for Amnesiac, but he does have access to that Psychic Scream if he needs it.
Yeah, what a powerful turn for Catdestroyer. It's one of those things where Rogue just doesn't ever seem to really run out of steam anymore.
Yeah.
Elven Minstrel synergizing so well with Prince Keleseth. Overall, just making it very difficult for the Priest to draw cards and deal with the board state all at the same time.
And the Psychic Scream keeping the board clear, leading into that Shadow Reaper Anduin turn for Amnesiac. Catdestroyer, of course, is going to be aware of that card, isn't going to want to put too many resources onto the board playing into Anduin, so now he's kind of got to be riding that line between putting enough pressure on board but not expending too many resources that he can't reload afterwards.
Yeah, that is maybe one of the only downsides of the Prince Keleseth and Shadow Step is that you are a little more vulnerable now to something like Shadow Reaper Anduin going into turn 8.
But the Elven Minstrels are going to keep the minions coming, and because Amnesiac actually shuffled a Minstrel into the deck, it's possible the Catdestroyer is going to pick up even more minions this game than he would have normally.
Yeah, Minstrel into potentially another Minstrel further down the line. Yeah, that is a lot of reload for Catdestroyer.
All right, so effectively riding that line here. Maybe trying to bait out a Dragonfire Potion or a Shadow Reaper Anduin. I don't think this would bait Anduin.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question in Amnesiac's mind. Maybe in a different circumstance, he could be bluffing, but with double buff Keleseth, you know every single card in Catdestroyer's hand basically is going to get hit by Anduin.
He's got stuff to play out that Amnesiac can get some good value off of.
Yeah, for Amnesiac, it's just a matter of determining how the next few turns are going to play out. Potentially you do play Anduin early, so you can go for Kazaka's 5-mana potion later on, although I kind of doubt that 5-mana potion is going to have as much impact as you would like it to. So potentially we're even thinking that this Kazakis is going to wind up with a 10-mana potion later on, maybe a cheaper potion, and play it with alongside Velen further down the line.
Yeah. Oh wow, Amnesiac's going to just go ahead and rip that Shadow Reaper Anduin. This is essentially a big green light for Catdestroyer to develop as many big minions as he wants, as long as they're out of Dragonfire range. Now they're suddenly not vulnerable to anything that Amnesiac has.
Yeah, the Bone Mare has been patiently sitting in Catdestroyer's hand on the left side for so long. Finally able to come out, the green light, like you said, go ahead and play the Bone Mare.
The Cabal Courier pickup's actually really good too. It's very flexible. Maybe if Catdestroyer needs to find some reactive resource, Cabal Courier could be there to pick that up. And the Dragonfire Potion is found for Amnesiac, so that's going to give him a clear this turn with one of the hero powers into that Flame Elemental.
And I think that's kind of a slip-up from Catdestroyer here. He could have actually buffed the 3/4 Firefly, and Amnesiac only having 9 mana would not have been able to ping twice with the Shadow Reaper hero power, effectively playing around the Dragonfire from Amnesiac.
That's a good point. Catdestroyer, it seemed like he wanted to spread out the stats a little bit more, maybe to play around the natural copy of Shadow Word Death that Amnesiac has, but this time it ended up coming back to bite him a little bit. And these three options are pretty dang bad.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about overstated minions for their cost, Pit Lord is not too bad. And, you know, Amnesiac hasn't assembled the full Raza Anduin combo yet, so you're able to take a little bit of extra damage here and still be all right. I mean, the other two options just seem so bad. The Binding Heal, you know, once they have Raza Anduin, won't matter as much. Pit Lord, okay, not the best, but, you know, we'll take another overstated minion in our arsenal.
You don't have to play it, but at least having it in hand gives you something that you can play if for some reason you have no other options.
Yeah, and Catdestroyer now picks up a second Bone Mare and South Sea Deckhand. That's something that you just are not able to play around as the Priest. Just some additional burst damage here and there.
The Pint-Size Horror fully found for Amnesiac.
Yeah, I think in Amnesiac's spot, he'll likely go for that clear and then set up Kazakus, potentially going for 10 mana potion so he can make kind of a big swing turn with the Kazakus play.
Could pick up Polymorph All, could pick up maybe some of your own minion generation.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to decide right now whether or not the Kazakus should go for 1 mana or 10 mana. The upside of the 1 mana is you can play it alongside Velen for some extra spell damage and fit in the extra buffed hero power as well. So the 1 mana potion also still has a lot of merit.
Oh, snap picks for Amnesiac there. He knows exactly what he wants. I would imagine it's probably deal 6 to all, and then I think I saw summon 3 friendly minions that died.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of the dream potion in almost every circumstance, except for when the Bone Mare is out of range. I think that Bone Mare is coming down as a 7/7.
Bone Mare. That's a War Golem and a Blessing of Kings. The Catdestroyer going to play into this potion
This guy's toast.
quite a bit, and this could be the swing that Amnesiac needs. He's running out of spells to deal with the board, so he needs to get some minions on site. And the Kazakus potion is going to both clear the board and resummon 3 of his minions at the same time, so it's going to give him a little bit of power, something to fight on board with, because he doesn't have the spells to do it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, very rarely will we see Kazakus pull a 10 mana potion, but given this circumstance, I think Amnesiac is spot on, picking the 10 mana, going for summons, going for the board clear. Not bad overall.
All right, and some weak minions spawned, but that Acolyte of Pain could get Amnesiac closer to Raza, could get him closer to some life gain, maybe some more removal. Not bad overall. And he still does have the option to weave in the hero power a little bit over the course of a couple of turns to try and find some clears that way.
Well, let's see here. So the South Sea Deckhand doing 4, Bone Mare an additional 4. Shadow Step on the South Sea will be 2. So Catdestroyer is about 3 dagger pokes off of setting up that lethal option. He, of course, can still stick a pretty formidable board with the Vile Spine to stop the card draw, as well as a pretty big Firefly there.
Quite a bit of burst for Catdestroyer. He's got a Leroy in deck still. And because of all of the Elven Minstrels this game, he just has not run out of consistent pressure.
Yeah, and I think for Amnesiac here, this is maybe the turn to pull the trigger. You see the Vile Spine Slayer come out. It's time to play out Velen, ping out the 3/4, just trade off the board, and kind of use Velen to maybe solidify your game plan.
Okay. I think with the Nether Spite, this is signaling he's going to go for a Shadow Word Death this turn instead.
Yeah, you can also make use of the hero power here. Death, hero power again to clear up the board. That's also a very strong strategy. Keep more of your board stay alive as well.
Maybe looking for another Duskbreaker there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But in this case, seeing the Vile Spine Slayer comes out, you know, in the future, Prophet Velen will be maybe a little bit of a safer play down the line.
There's the Leroy, and Leroy Shadow Step is going to do it. Catdestroyer is going to take game number 4 and tie up this set. It was just a matter of time. Amnesiac navigated this one really well. That Kazakus potion for 10 mana, that's not an obvious play by any means. It's very rare that you see a Kazakus potion for 10 mana. But yeah, this is a Hunter deck. Okay, so Hunter up against Raza Dragon Priest. Hunter is a deck that lives or dies by the curve. You need to curve out incredibly well, assuming you are playing a mid-range Hunter variant and not some form of Rock Dalar shenanigans. So you're going to want to go 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can land that Houndmaster, you can start buffing, Bear Sharks out of range, for instance, and that can actually be pretty difficult for Priest to deal with. So I can see why Catdestroyer brought this to the tournament.
Yeah, I can imagine. We have to imagine that Catdestroyer has some anti-Priest techs. He is leaving Raza Priest up, and he's got to be thinking, our opponents are probably playing, the Raza Priest variant, one of the best decks in the meta at the moment.
Yeah, there's kind of two ways that you can tech out this Hunter deck. You can go with Stitch trackers and just go like full crabs. We were seeing a lot of that back when Murloc Paladin was still very prevalent. You were going double Hungry Crab, double Kalaka Crawler, and tracking's additional ways to find them. You can also put in some flares, maybe try to go anti-mage, anti-secret tech. Unfortunately, Murloc Paladin and mages with double ice blocks, control mages, are not super prevalent right now. What do you think that he would do against Priest specifically?
I think overall against Priests, you have the opportunity to put in something like the Cobalt Scalebane, maybe even like
that's a good
Hydra.
point.
Prey on the weakness that the Raza Priest only has one copy of Death, and when you have such powerful minions in the early game, it becomes hard for them to deal with consistent pressure of minions with 5 or more attack.
Yeah, that's a great point. The Scalebane plays around the Dragonfire. Anything that allows you to curve into Savannah Highmane and then have pressure maybe for turn 7 as well, a 5 mana plus a hero power, that's pretty solid.
Yeah, Catdestroyer, having the Pirate package probably means he's playing a much more aggressive curve, maybe a curve that doesn't even involve Savannah Highmane, one of the Hunter's most powerful cards.
Yeah.
But at this point, we're seeing that, the Pirates in hand means he's definitely got a more aggressive game plan planned.
I've never been so excited to see a Huffer, and I don't know why.
That is a game-winning Huffer. It's a situation where I think Catdestroyer is thinking, he's played another Spite, we're going to go all face here to kind of play around the possibility of Dustbreaker as well this turn.
This is not a matchup where you're trading over another Spite Historian. Let Amnesiac dictate the trades and just go full face. You've got a kill command in hand. That's 5 burst. Amnesiac's already down to 19. Catdestroyer knows the plan. He sees the lines.
Yeah, the Catdestroyer thinking a little bit here. Okay, this was a very solid Dustbreaker turn. Amnesiac instead going for Pyromancer. Does that mean that he's baiting me? Or maybe potentially he just didn't get the chance to roll it?
The Spirit Lash pickup for Amnesiac is really nice. The Alexstrasza, potentially, if we can get to turn 9, could be game-winning as well. But all in all, Amnesiac has the necessary heal that he needs in hand right now. He just needs time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Catdestroyer picking up the first copy of Bittertide Hydra here. A little hesitant to coin it out, maybe.
The only real punish being Shadow or Death.
Yeah, but Death on 5 mana means that Amnesiac is not playing Raza, which means he gets that free hero power online a little bit later. And on top of that, it's kind of hard to fill out the remainder of the 2 mana. In this case, Amnesiac does happen to have a Novice Engineer if he chooses to go for that line as well.
Catdestroyer not happy about that. His reload is running a little bit dry here.
Crackling Razor Maw here. We'd like to see +3 attack. That's something that's going to get a little bit of extra chip damage in here. And Amnesiac, without the Dragonfire Potion, is pretty vulnerable still to the damage coming in from the Hunter.
That Silence pickup is actually phenomenal.
Yeah, Priest of
Silence the
Feast.
Mole, Smite the Razor Maw.
Overall, it looks like Amnesiac has kind of hit the stabilizing point this game 5. Catdestroyer, not a whole lot of resources left. Leroy Jenkins comes to the hand, but with Priest of the Feast up, it doesn't look like it's really going to change the outcome of this game.
Yeah, I think Amnesiac has turned the corner. It was looking so good for Catdestroyer. He had a pretty solid curve. He had Amnesiac back against the wall. But it's just not enough. Hunter, I don't know. There's a reason you're only seeing one of them in the World Championships, and there's a reason why even that was surprising.
Yeah, I think overall it's just kind of lost a bit of consistency. The loss of quick shot means that your only real burst potential is the Leroy and the kill command. And for a deck that's trying to go face so adamantly, it's so hard to be consistent when you're always kind of preying on that kill command talk deck to kind of bail you out of some of these tougher spots.
You see Catdestroyer shaking his head. I think he kind of knows where this game is going, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Amnesiac does have as much life total as he can to play with here. You know, just getting in the additional heal now, probably wanting to set up for Primordial Drake.
Oh, it pains me.
Yeah, the window for Catdestroyer's aggressive game plan has definitely closed up at this point. Not much left that he can do here.
We may even just see the Prophet Velen come down onto the board. No reason not to. Catdestroyer likely isn't playing Deadly Shot in a build of Hunter that's this aggressive.
Yeah, I definitely like that Amnesiac is still putting on a lot of board pressure here. He's at such a healthy life total that he's able to, you know, start turning the tables and making the Hunter thing. He really is the aggressor here.
Well, unfortunately, this time it wasn't the Hunter, and Amnesiac is going to take that series 3-2 over Catdestroyer.